Good evening, and welcome to Suffering in Silence with Minister Tia on Luv Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. Luv Bay family, we are continuing to rise out of the ashes together. Our topic on this evening is dealing with change. We have with us our guest co-host, Carrie Hardy, and also our guest for the evening is Apostle Sam Jones. Listeners, if you have any questions or comments for our guest or co-host, you can email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. Also, if you have resources that you would like to share with us on a national or local level from your country, your community, your local organizations, or your faith community, you can also email us at sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. And listeners, I want to take a moment just to thank you all for tuning in, for being here with us every Friday from literally all over the world. So to our listeners in Africa, Europe, Asia, China, Italy, Russia, Germany, of course, Canada and the United States, Indonesia, Australia, Jamaica, the Bahamas, everywhere. The list is too long to run through, but we just want to acknowledge you all and thank you for being with us all this way through this journey. With that, Carrie, would you greet our listeners on this evening?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Carrie Hardy. I'm a creative writer and a storyteller, and as Tia mentioned, I also helped edit her narrative on everything she went through with her previous marriage and how she triumphed over that. And I'm really happy to be with you guys to discuss change, because I think her story really emulates that. And change is a really necessary part of life and development. So I think also being comfortable with it is very important. So I think that this topic is very important, and I'm glad to have Apostle Jones and Tia tonight to speak about it and to answer some of the questions you all have about easing into change.
Thank you so much. So I think tonight Apostle Jones will be answering more questions than me. So with that, Apostle, would you please greet our listeners on this evening?
Good evening, one and all. Good evening to everyone. Tia and Carrie, God bless you both and everyone who's listening. I am Apostle Sam Jones. I am presiding prelate for United Assemblies in Christ Worldwide. I also serve as the citywide police chaplain to the Philadelphia Police Department, and various other things that I do. But we are grateful for the Lord to take time to be with you all to discuss change and anything we can do to help people in our society today, whether it's ministry or relational at home or even educational, is always my desire. So I know one of the topic that we're on, change, is something that is inevitable, but how we handle it is so different. It's got diverse areas of handling change. So we're excited about the program tonight and looking forward to spending time with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So listeners, as usual, we want to start with sharing some resources. So first we have Male Survivors Partnership. This is for information on male sexual abuse in the UK. Their website is malesurvivor.co.uk. In England, we also have IDAS, which is a specialist charity in Yorkshire supporting people affected by domestic abuse and sexual violence. Their website is idas.org.uk. Their phone number is 03-000-110-110. And we also have the Befrienders Volunteer Action to Prevent Suicide. You can find a helpline by country if you visit their website, which is www.befrienders.org. And with that, again, listeners, our topic on tonight is dealing with change. And as we alluded to just moments ago, dealing with change is inevitable. dealing with change is not easy, always, but it is necessary. And I really do not want to oversimplify the issue. I understand that at the same time that change is necessary, change can sometimes also hurt, or it could be uncomfortable before your situation actually gets better. So it's not easy when you're talking about removing yourself from an abusive relationship, or it's not easy when you're talking about moving people out of your life when they violated your boundaries. There are details and happenings that the public can't see going on in your personal life behind closed doors. But at some point, in some way, change does need to come about. So, Apostle Jones, I would ask you if on tonight, if you could guide our listeners with an encouragement to do what they need to do to change their situations, while at the same time being sympathetic to the reality that change is difficult and sometimes just out and out just scary.
Well, of course, Tia, because people fear what change will bring, number one, but they also fear moving into the position to change. And a lot of people, the first problem they get is, what do I do? What step do I take? And if they think they're going to take the wrong step, then they'll back off of making any step at all. So now we're bringing fear, which causes the hindrance of any type of change. And usually change is because of an experience of pain.
Yes.
We experience some sort of pain or something we have to readjust in our lives, or something we went through or dealing with, and so meaning that we have to change from that situation. But it brings a whole cycle of things happening with us mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, because when you change one thing, it affects everything.
Yes.
And so while you're thought of changing, you can't just think of, I'm going to change my mind. You have to now change your mind, your mental attitude, your mental disposition, your emotional, your spiritual. You're going to have to change everything. And sometimes it's even better to shut everything down old and go into new without gathering some of the old things with us. Because I found out by talking to people that old things have a way of attaching themselves to you until you release them.
Yes.
And it's the release that causes the struggle. Sometimes it's not even so much of moving into change, but releasing from the old is what causes the most damage in our emotions, in our spirit, in our mind, because we hold on to it so much. Mm-hmm. And so I always encourage people to try to detach yourself as much as you can, not from the reality, but from the attachment to the reality. Because certain things that happen, I tell people all the time, you get mail, and in this mail is a bill. Well, that mail is real. Yeah. So now let's deal with the reality of that. You're going to either face it and deal with it. You're going to realize you paid it off, or either you're going to figure out how to get it done. It's the same thing with emotional change or relational change. It's real. Things that happen are real. Abuse is real. Loneliness is real. These things are real, but how we look at them to move forward is what makes the difference. And so we're going to experience the pain, but remember, and this is really a word of encouragement here, every experience of pain is to fulfill purpose. So don't hold on to the experience of the pain. Remember the experience and then wait. And while you're waiting, start fulfilling purpose. The more you fulfill purpose, the more you'll get away from the pain that you've had to deal with. Because scars are always going to be on. Thank God for makeup, right? You put makeup on, you can't see our scars, right?
Right.
But sometimes we get to a point where it doesn't matter, because all of a sudden the scars disappear because we live in change. So the more you live in the change, the more the scars will disappear.
So I think I agree absolutely with everything that you just said. And as you were talking, it reminded me of my own situation, as Carrie alluded to earlier. With me, myself, the change that I went through when I left the abusive marriage that I was in, change absolutely terrified me because I already made the decision to go. I was leaving. I was even at the point when I was in my own place and just starting over. I was absolutely terrified because I kept saying to myself, at the time, I am now 38 years old and I literally have to start my life over from scratch. It was like it was a clean slate, and I did not know how to move forward. I was overwhelmed because I was thinking of everything at one time. I had to make sure my work was straight, my finances were straight, my kids were straight. Still trying to, operate in ministry and, deal with my relationship with God, trying to function on my own. That change, being on my own, was an absolute shock, and trying to figure out how to get it done. It really was terrifying, and there were no answers that anyone could give me because everyone was on the outside looking in, and they didn't know absolutely everything. So some people did try to be helpful, but it just didn't fit my situation. It just wasn't helping me, and other people really just didn't care. It was like, you on your own, you just go figure it out. But really, I at that moment was like, I'm 38 and I have to start over. Like, I don't know how to be single. I had been with this one person for almost all my life, for 20 years. This one person was all I knew. I didn't know how to be single. I didn't know how to be by myself. I didn't know how to be in a house by myself. That's not what I was used to. And, even just the simple things, being in a house and it's quiet and not having that person there, even though, because the entire marriage was not horrible. There were some moments in there that were good. And so there were times I did miss those good moments. But that change was like, oh, I'm completely by myself now. This is it. And that was a hard shock that I had to deal with, that I had to feel the brunt of. And I really just had to figure it out, which for me was just taking it a little bit at a time every day. I had to stop trying to do everything at once. I really just had to figure out, one part at a time. And I think one of the first things that I focused on was my finances. Like, I had to get that together, to move forward. So change, it's a shock. It is.
Well, you said one thing that's very relevant when you deal with the word with change. Is change brings fear. And when change brings fear, it impairs your vision.
Yes.
So when your vision is impaired, you can't see any light in front of you. You can't see anything or which way to go. You don't even really see where you come from and what got you where you are, because you're dealing with fear now. And fear is what's consuming everything in your life. It's consuming your emotions, your spiritual, your children. It's just covering. It's just covering everything. So now you have fear, you have change, and you have an impaired vision. So now, where am I going? How am I going to look in this empty room and get comfortable? How am I going to look where I come from and now build something where I can't see where I'm going? And I think a lot of people get caught up in trying to see in front of them without getting rid of some of the things that block their vision. Because one of the things is accepting the fact that you have to change. When you accept the fact you have to change, that's like a windshield wiper coming on your mind. Because now it's starting to clear up some of the things that you're dealing with, because now I've accepted the fact that this is my new reality.
Yes.
So now I can see a little bit in front of me. Now I got to accept who's around me now and be secure with who's around me. That's another windshield wiper. And so now we're starting to get our vision that's been impaired now is starting to open up because I'm handling the fear. And most people, and this is to encourage all the listeners, don't fear looking at the situation so that you can see clearer in front of you. So you see it, so you see where you're going, you're getting away from. You see it so you know where you're going to. Just don't get stuck there. Because when you look at the reality of the empty room, you don't have everything that you had before in that empty room. So now you're moving forward. So now you're getting away from all the things that had hindered you from getting to this place of freedom. The other thing is, which is a good point, is people change from bondage to freedom. They can't handle freedom immediately.
Yes.
Because they keep remembering where the chains were. And so they keep looking, and even though the chain's not on them, they keep seeing the mark and expecting someone to clamp them down so they can't move into their chain. So what now is not become physical, now it's become mental.
Yeah.
And so now they're binding themselves on, and don't realize that they're binding themselves and stopping themselves from moving forward because they're seeing a new reality, but they're looking at an old one. So now they're pressuring themselves, and they don't even realize. People don't realize that it's more pressure. The more pressure you put on yourself in the midst of transition, the more you'll fear change.
Yes. And so for me, acceptance was a huge part of my reality and being able to make it through. I had to accept this is what it is. This is how it is. It's not going to be what I hoped it would be. And I had to, do the windshield wiper thing and all right, now let's move forward. I literally had to make a list for myself. I wrote it down. I wrote down what I needed to do. And I started, marking things off my list a little bit at a time because I was overwhelming myself. I did have the fear there, but I had to learn to deal with the fear and not let the fear keep overtaking me because at one point I was making decisions out of fear. And I had to sit and I had to be able to think and I had to calm down because as you said, freedom was overwhelming. It really was. And that may not make sense until or unless you've been in a kind of situation like that. But to all of a sudden be able to, I can do what I want. I can go where I want. It's like, well, what am I actually going to do? Where am I actually going to go? It was overwhelming. And so again, for me, acceptance was a huge part of that. Accepting my new reality and doing what, I needed to do. And, I had to let go of, I held on to a hope for a long time that, my marriage was going to finally work and, my ex was going to be what I needed him to be. I had to let that go. I had to let go of that. It wasn't happening. That wasn't what it was that I was dealing with. And I had to do what I needed to do for myself. And for me, part of my change, and then Carrie, I'll ask you your thoughts, but another part of change for me was I actually had to start thinking about me, making decisions for me, because at one point I was doing everything for my children. All I could say is that I have to take care of my kids. They have to survive. But at some point, I had to start taking care of myself. I had to be able to focus on me and take care of myself. So that was a huge part for me because it's always been easy for me to meet somebody else's need, help them, put a situation together for them and make them more comfortable. But I really had to make that decision that I was going to do what I needed to do for myself, which a huge part of that was the mental and emotional part of taking care of me.
Yes. I was listening and realized that one of the things that we have to do, or people have to do when they're talking about change, is go through a decompression. And decompression brings pressure, because you're decompressing yourself from all the things that brought you to this point. And so a part of the decompression is a little instability, but the instability also allows you to then regroup and become stable. But we have to because a lot of when you decompress from all the things that you're dealing with, the attacks and the issues and the violence and whatever a person is going through, when they decompress from that, they don't realize that they're getting rid of that. Mm-hmm. And so they're kind of shaky until they realize I can stand on my own 2 feet now.
Yeah.
And once that pressure is released, you realize you're actually stable enough to start seeing a difference in yourself first and then in your surroundings. Because until you see difference in yourself, you'll never see the difference in your surrounding, because you'll start fearing the surrounding until you get a grip of who you are and where you're going, and that you're standing now in this change. And most people, because they are attacking change and not living in the change, that's what makes the struggle. People attack change. You got to live in change. It means every day there's another process and another step to your stability.
Yes.
And if you don't just attack it because you attack it, then you try to get it all at the same time, you're going to burn yourself out. Mm-hmm. But every day there's an addition that you add on to your places of stability. You become stronger. You become wiser. You know the decisions you got to make. You learn how to breathe, take a breath, because before change came, you didn't even know how to breathe.
Right.
So now
Literally.
you're by yourself and you get stable. You can at least breathe. Oh, this is what breathing feels like.
Yes.
This is what the air, a functional air and not dysfunctional air feels like. Because when you're in the midst of change, everything's dysfunctional. But when everything settles, now you're saying, this is what breathing looks like. Oh, this is what non-confusion looks like. And you got to get used to that, because you're used to the opposite. So it's a decompression, and that decompression brings pressure. But as long as you get through, you'll be able to stabilize the pressure so that you can handle the next move that you have to make.
Yes. Carrie, you have a question or a comment?
So change, I think that, yes, change is inherently or naturally scary. That's human nature. But I think that there's also this aspect of having been traumatized by change. Mm-hmm. And so therefore you're kind of seeing change as bad and change as being something volatile. Something like nothing's ever good has come of change, mm-hmm. especially if it happened in your developmental years or during your childhood. I think from that point on, change can be a very scary thing, and it can make you less likely to take risk. And I think sometimes people are shamed for that, which I feel like is not fair, because even for me, I'm more of a person who kind of just goes for it or whatever. And I think in society that's more like praised or whatever. But I think that at the same time, that's a personality trait. And I don't think if someone is not like that, I don't think that they should be, you play it too safe. You got to get out of your comfort zone and everything like that. Because I think there's a part of that that's not acknowledging some of people's trauma to change. Mm-hmm. So for people who are really fearful of change or anything like that, yes, it is good to change and everything, and it's good to embrace change. And you have to get in a mindset where you can have self-development, but don't get too bad on yourself. Don't feel like you're chicken. If something as bad has happened to you where change has brought trauma or something bad, don't feel like you're a scaredy cat or like you're chicken or you're not, whatever. I don't think you should feel like that. And then if you're someone who has or is trying to have a relationship with God, I do think that it is God's will for us to go to our fullest potential, but that's where faith and trust comes in. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we can't get into that mode in our own strength, especially if a bunch of bad stuff has happened to us because of change. So I would say a lot of times change can be a faith journey, because sometimes so much stuff happens to us, we can't embrace change on our own.
Absolutely. And I still want to be sensitive, to the fact that, change can be difficult and it can be scary, and especially if you're dealing with, issues of trauma. But I really want to say that no one can initiate changes that you need to make in your life but you. You have to do it. So I totally understand fear. I understand the fear of the unknown. I understand the fear of trauma. But if you don't take steps, if you don't move forward, then it won't happen. And it could be anything, and it doesn't always have to be associated with abuse or with trauma. I mean, you have to update your resume. You have to apply for the job. You have to go through the interview. You have to look for a new house. You have to apply to school. If that's what you want to do, you have to do it. You have to take the steps in your life to get to where you want to be. And it's an ABC journey, all right? You're not going to go from A to Z and have everything done. You got to take steps. But there is no way that I can look into your life and start getting things done for you. As much as I want to support and as much as I want to encourage, I will sit, I will listen, I will be as much of a comfort as I can. But at some point, you've got to do what you need to do. If it's making a phone call, if it's going into someone's office, if it's filling out a report or some paperwork, you have to move if you want to be able to go forward. And you know what? And I'll say this, and then, Apostle Jones, I'll go to you for whatever you'd like to say. A lot of times you have to move and you don't know what's going to happen. A lot of times you have to move and you're scared while you're moving. And you don't have all the answers. Sometimes you just have to do it. And it doesn't even have to be a big thing. I think sometimes we think about change and we have like this huge thing, in our minds. For me, at one moment, change involved me actually getting out of my bed, actually making a decision. I'm going to get out of my bed today. I'm not going to stay in my room. I'm not going to keep the covers over my head. I'm going to get up. That was a huge step for change, for me. So it could be something, the world may see it as small or the world may see it as huge. But you, somewhere in yourself, you've got to find that little bit of faith, that mustard seed faith. You got to do it. God will work with you, but he's not going to do it all for you.
Right.
Apostle.
Right. Like nothing from nothing leaves nothing, right?
Right.
But Carrie hit something really important because in our generations are a little different. So I'm a baby boomer. So you both, neither one of you are baby boomers. So as a baby boomer, we were trained, and at some point, we lived in you're supposed to be this. You're supposed to do that, because it was just put on us to do that. So if we wanted to change, we struggled to change because of what we were supposed to be. So then what happened is we started living in the eyes of others. This is what the marriage is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. This is what the relationship is supposed to be. So no matter what they do, you stay. No matter what they do, you do this. And so you're supposed to have this thing in you to take stuff that really we should not have had to take, right? And so now we live in these years trying to please others and displeasing ourselves. So now we're becoming emotionally, spiritually, and mentally dysfunctional without realizing it. So we're taking on abusive situations all of our life, because now what's happening is we're being bullied into changing to please others. So we're not even free enough to change because we're being bullied to change. And either the problem with that is either we're being bullied to change to please them, or bullied to be different from who we are and not even pleasing to them. Because a lot of people will bully you emotionally and still don't want to be with you. Right. They just want to bully who you are. And so there's always a self-development that takes place. We have to develop in ourselves so that we can get away from being scared to face change. Like today's generation, they're more boisterous. They'll say things that they just
speak freely, because I do not identify with that.
Just say whatever they want. They just don't have any limits to their conversation. It's like, what do I could never say those things just because it doesn't feel right in me to say certain things. But today, there's no bars on what conversation is. And so we're a little freer today, but it still leaves us in a place where we still need to develop ourselves if we're going to move to a place of change. So what I realized is, if I'm laying in the bed from an abusive situation, or I had to move now to be by myself, and this change I'm scared of and I'm fearful of this change, and I hope this helps somebody here, is you got to realize that your process only needs you to trust you.
Yes.
You trust you, and then you put your trust in God. You're not trusting others, because remember, is an other that failed you in certain areas. So before you start trusting another, trust the process for yourself and trust in you, so that you can self-develop. You won't be bullied by the process or being validated by others. You're validating yourself. You're validating your next move. You're validating your next position. And everything you do now is to validate your trust within yourself. Because remember, you have to love on you more than anyone else loves you first.
Yes.
And so you got to put yourself out there. I'm going to develop myself to be in a position where whatever change I make, I'm going to trust the process. As scared as I am, I'm going to trust the process. As fearful as I'm walking with one eye open, one eye closed, but I'm going to trust the process. There's a scripture that tells us, we always quote it, we say, yea, though I walk through the valley in the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for the Lord is with us. But there's also a scripture that says, the Lord is a lamp unto your feet and a light into your path. And one of the problems we get caught up in is we're looking at changing when we get to the end of the tunnel, because we see the light. The light's not at the end of the tunnel. The light is at your feet. Mm-hmm. So while you're trying to get to the end of the tunnel, you're missing out on the step. Every step, there's a change for you.
One step at a time.
There's a process. Exactly. Step by step, you're developing. So when you look up, you're going to be outside the tunnel. And so that's what people have to realize, is that, I'm developing myself. I'm trusting who I am. This is a process that I had to deal with, and it's something that I'm going to get through. And that means you have to encourage yourself at all times. I don't think, even in change daily, when you're changing things daily, you have to encourage yourself every day. Yes. Don't be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Every day, renew your mind. Say something. I do it every day. 10 positive affirmations every day. Affirm my day every day, because that's going to develop me. Because there's some things that if we don't affirm our day, we don't encourage ourselves, we're going to go backwards, and then we're going to live in fear. And then we're going to wait for somebody to validate us. Mm-hmm. And then what we do, we go into that cycle where people go right back to what they came out of. And that's what we don't want to do.
Yes. Well, I think that was awesome. Put your trust in you. That was beautiful. Carrie, did you had a comment?
I think development, yes, Apostle Jones, I think that the word development is a great word, because I think some people have a negative connotation for the word change, especially if change has always accompanied loss for them. I think thinking about it as development is very good. And if for you, development is getting stability for yourself, being stable on your own independently, if that is the change for you, I think that that's great, because I think we live in such a social media world now where it's all about, you got to hustle and all of this, and you have to do that. And it's such a visual, so many visuals are hitting us every time we click on an app, but I think change and what it means to be developed is relative. It's You need to find out what that means for you. Like Apostle Jones was saying, it's not just other people. Don't let other people influence, it's hard to do that because we're humans and we're social, but don't let other people control what development and potential, being at your highest potential, means for you. That's different for everyone. Mm-hmm. And I think that now we're kind of in this age where because he was saying that he was growing up that it was like, you have to be this, you have to be that, and you can't move out of that. But now I think it's so like I'm here and you're there. What are you doing? Where's yours? You know, it's very like, and you're expected to be at this high level, and you're expected, everything is supposed to be on microwave time.
Yeah.
Now, everything is like instant gratification with Amazon. You don't have to go shopping right at your door. You know, everything is on microwave time now, and people want you to feel like if you're actually putting the work in and it's taking time, that you're doing something wrong. I'm like, a hard work is that's
right.
correct.
Right.
Correct.
Awesome.
Like,
hard work takes time. It takes time and effort.
Trying to make you feel like that's a process is wrong, and it's like everything takes time. You know, even when God made the world or something, and if you want microwave time, you got to pray to something else, because that is that's not how things work.
Exactly. And change can be a sign or a progression and growth. And when you take growth, if you want something done the right way, it takes time and effort, as we said. You know, if you put something in the microwave, you better eat it real quick, because it's going to get cold real quick. Yeah. But if you want it really warm, heat it all the way through, put it in the oven. Well, that takes time. Now, you want what you want, but if you want it the right way, then it takes time, it takes effort, and you don't have to keep up with everybody around you. Change doesn't mean, as Apostle Jones alluded to before, it doesn't mean keeping up with someone else's situation, someone else's marriage, someone else's relationship, someone else's job. You do what you need to do for yourself when you need to do it, and that's if you need to do it. Because sometimes you could be in a situation where you're fine, you're where you're supposed to be. You don't go stirring up waves just to do it. That's not good. So you don't want change just for the sake of change, just to say I'm doing something so you can take some pictures and post them. No, we don't want that either. There needs to be a healthy balance. Listeners, we want to welcome you again to Suffering in Silence with Minister Tia on Luv Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We are here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern, with a replay on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern. Also Thursdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern. In Luv Bay, we are continuing to rise out of the ashes together. We want to share a few more resources. We have the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Their website is thehotline.org. The phone number is 1-800-799-7233. Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, also known as RAIN. Their website is www.rainn.org. And we have the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Their number is 1-800-273-8255. And those resources are in the United States. Apostle Jones, you alluded to earlier in the very beginning, you said that change is inevitable. And it is. Change is inevitable in some cases. So in some instances, it's a situation of, I believe, taking control of your atmosphere and you making changes rather than just waiting and watching for things to happen. I believe there's some situations where it's like we need to be making a move of, on offense instead of reacting in defense. So, Apostle, can you speak to that notion of change?
Sure. From two areas you look at, when you talk about waiting, when you wait, I tell people patience and waiting, they work together, but while you're working while you're waiting. You're not just sitting still and waiting for something to happen. So whatever it takes, you have to make it happen. Because what happens is while you're working in your change, time is going to take away pain and it's going to produce inner growth, and so that you can begin to heal. Because, while you're changing, you're also healing.
Yeah.
While you're changing, you're developing. You said again, while you're changing, you're moving forward. And so one of the things you have to do when we're dealing with change is believe in the strength that's within you. A lot of if you have enough strength to walk away, run away, or get away from what you're dealing with, that speaks to this level of strength that you actually have. Most people think that you were just wore out and tore up and just had nothing else left. Well, really, it's the opposite. You're really strong enough to make the move to get out and to get away. When even though it has wore you out physically, wore you out mentally, wore you out spiritually, your first step to freedom now is bringing you an inner strength to believe that you can do it because you're not going backwards.
Yes.
And once you determine in your mind that you're moving forward, you're starting to believe more in your ability, more in the spirit of going forward, strengthening everything that you're doing. And then everything you do, you're taking the strength out of the struggle that you just came out of. Mm-hmm. Everything you do in change, you're telling struggle, you can't hold me no more. You're telling abuse, you can't hold me. You're telling disappointment, you can't hold me. And so when you're dealing with change, you got to add strength to the change based on the ability that you had to leave the situation you're in, the ability that you had to get help, because all the resources get you help, and also trusting in the process. So while you're trusting in the process, you're building strength. And most people don't really know how strong they are to make the decision to move away from the hurt and the pain that they've been dealing with. And as much as you would cry, as much as depression would come, if people can start seeing, and the listeners, if you start seeing how much strength you have in moving away from a situation, then you'll be operating on offense and not defense. So, because when you're operating on defense, right, you're always you're trying to stop the team from getting to you. But now you're on offense. You're moving forward. You got the ball. You're running. You're making the moves necessary, and that means the more you move forward, the stronger you become. So everyone needs to start operating from realizing there's an inner strength in you that someone didn't take from you. You have an inner strength in you, even through whatever you're dealing with, physically, mentally, emotionally. There's something inside of you that gave you the ability to go forward, and that speaks to the strength. And that doesn't speak to weakness. It doesn't speak to any type of oppression. It speaks to the strength in you, but most of us don't look at it because of the fear of it and because of the struggle of it. We don't look at it, I'm stronger now. We just look at it, I'm free. But actually, your freedom needed you to have enough strength to get where you are.
Yes.
And I think we kind of downplay how strong a person is to make the decision to make a change.
Yes.
You know, and there's no weakness in change. There's no weakness in making changes because you're fighting. Change is a fight. And anyone knows, if change is a fight and you have all these things at you that have been bullying you all these years and all these months and these hours been bullying you, and you change, then what you're saying is, I'm done fighting this by myself and letting it beat on me. I'm going to get my inner strength and fight back. Mm-hmm. And so every time you make a step to change, you're actually lifting more weights. You're dropping old weights and lifting stronger weights. And every listener needs to know that you are strong in making the decision to make that phone call. You're strong to walk into that center and get help, or to send that email. It takes strength to do that. And that means I might not have overcome my fear, but I have enough strength to make this call.
Yes.
And that makes it a whole lot different. Or you might not overcome your fear, but you had enough strength to take that cover off your head.
Exactly.
And that's what made the difference. When you realize I'm strong enough to move this cover, the next thing is I'm strong enough to sit up.
Yes.
Next thing, I'm strong enough to stand up. Now I got to go down the hall, I'm strong enough to walk because I don't have the covers on me. I'm not in the dark. I see what's in front of me, and I'm going to that room. And once you do it once, you know you can do it again. And people got to live in that.
Exactly. I want to go back to a point that Carrie made when she talked about change doesn't have to be associated with something bad or negative. There are times when change can be good. And I think, and Apostle, if you could expound on this, I do believe, and I have seen times that there have been changes of good and people shied away from it. They ran away from it because they felt like, I can't handle it. I don't deserve it. Their self-worth was not where it needed to be. Their self-esteem was not where it needed to be. I've seen people turn down promotions in their jobs because they felt like, I can't do this. They obviously had the qualifications and the skills, or it would not have been offered to them, but they really felt within themselves, I don't deserve it. There are opportunities that have come to people and they felt like, I can't do it. I can't step up in ministry because I'm just not worth it. I'm not the person who can handle it. So there are some good changes that do come. And I do believe that part of that, what's eaten away at the self-worth and self-esteem, is dealing with trauma, coming out of situations, where we've been hurt and we've been damaged to the point to where we turn away and run away from the good changes.
Yeah. Wow. Low esteem is mental and emotional bondage, because with low esteem comes to keep you lower than where you are. You have already risen above it. You just don't see it. So they wouldn't have chosen you or promoted you unless they seen something in you or saw your work. But your focus is just one-minded. And so what you have done is put yourself in the bondage of a low esteem and have oppressed anything that can come good to you. So when it does come, the spirit of negativity is already attached to you. And when the spirit of negativity is attached to you, you're not thinking that you're good enough to make this adjustment, to make this move. Or why would they do that to me? Or this great change, it's got to be something to it. It's something, they're setting me up for something. So now we're thinking this good change has a negative connotation to it because we can't believe this is happening to us because of the baggage that we have held on to. And so now what has happened is we've had this bondage over our life that we have to learn how to be free from. And the only way you can get free from that type of bondage is to take the chance and do something that you would never do. Say yes instead of saying no. Go instead when they say you're going, you always say no, I'm gonna go this time, because what you realize is that you're holding yourself back from receiving the blessings of being free, of being healed, of being changed, of receiving better and greater. And so that's something that the inner man has to have a spiritual awakening to have an emotional awakening also. So when I wake up spiritually and realize I am better, I need to add that on to my natural man to say, because a lot of times, in ministry wise, we think sometimes, and I just dealt with this, that we have to learn how to separate that what my ministry is my ministry. The things I've had to deal with in the natural, if I don't take care of them, they're going to attach themselves to my ministry. And then my ministry is going to be in bondage just like I was. So now I've got to separate it so I can stay focused on what I need to do in ministry and let the spirit of the ministry heal me in my natural so I can handle the great changes that's coming to me naturally. And so we got to realize that change is good. And people don't understand it because of, this is another thing about surroundings. If you are around surroundings that are negative or not encouraging, that's why you got to learn how to encourage yourself. You have to encourage yourself because everyone's not going to be for you. Everyone's not going to walk with you. Everyone's not going to agree. And so when that good change comes, when that door opens, that avenue opens, that miracle comes, if you're not thinking straight, you're going to reject it and miss out on everything that's good coming to you. Yes. And then you will not progress. And you never see people always processing. Processing just keeps you going in a circle. I tell people a lot of times, Carrie, I said, y'all are tethering spiritually. You're just in a spiritual tether. You're just tethering, and there's no connection. You never get connected. And so people will tether around good changes and never walk into them because they've never seen a good change be a permanent change. Mm. And so here they're fighting because the last time something good happened, something bad happened. But you got to stop measuring the good with the bad and take the good and make it great. And so that way it'll push out the bad things, because bad is bad, but good is better. Yes. And we have to be able to accept that.
Yes. Take the good and make it great. Awesome.
Exactly.
Carrie, do you have a question or a comment?
I think something you said in the very beginning of our conversation was significant when you said you, for a while, were really holding on to your ex-husband evolving or returning to a prior state, and eventually you had to let that go. Mm-hmm. I think that's really meaningful, because sometimes change is simply letting go.
Yes.
Because when you're really close with someone, or you love someone, or you have given them your trust, and then they do something that does not align with the concept you have of who they are in your head, it's very painful. Mm-hmm. Because that's very impactful towards our reality, what's real to us. So if you feel like this person is loyal, is trustworthy, is compassionate and kind-hearted, you wholeheartedly believe that, and then they do something that does not align with that at all, it's very painful. Mm-hmm. And it's very jarring. And you want to hold on to who that person was or who you believe them to be, but sometimes you have to let go, because every time they do an action or say something or give a look or have body language that does not align with that, it's like a gut punch every time.
Yeah.
And so it's just this process of being disappointed over and over again, disappointment over. And it's just like, you have to, because disappointment is very devastating. It is. Mm-hmm. So you have to let that go, because you're just going to drown, really, like in disappointment, and you can't let that happen to yourself.
Yes.
So you have to let it go, and until you can do it, y'all can do it.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. If I can do it, anybody can do it.
Mm-hmm. I want to say this and especially to men. Men understand that, we hear a lot of things that women go through and deal with. But think about this: if a woman's dealt with it, so has a man.
Yes.
When it comes down to these things, and we, because of our upbringing and the egotism that we deal with, we don't want to share the truth of the things that we have had to deal with. But men are as emotional. Men can be as hurt and devastated, mm-hmm. and there's nothing wrong with understanding that you're in that position as a man. And it doesn't take away from you being a man. It adds on to you being a better man.
Yes.
To understand that this is not how you're supposed to live, and that there is better for you. And men shy away from getting help when we need help also to deal with situations and issues that we hide and cover. We'll cover the hurt. We'll cover the abuse because we think it's too manly. It's not manly enough. If I say something, I'm taking away from my manhood. When in actuality is, the more I bring it out, I'm going to find out there's other men who feel the same way. And they've been hiding issues and covering and living every day in fear, living in pain, living in situations they've been trying to get out of, situations of change that they don't know how to change. And we have to really understand that when a man is hurt physically, that it's just as emotional. Because they've had trust in someone that they now have to realize I can't trust them. And Carrie said it. That word disappointment is a big word.
Yes.
And they say, and men, as hard as a man is, as hard as they love. Men love hard. And if they really love who they're with and that person turns on them, it's devastating. I know men today who have not recovered enough to have another relationship because they didn't know that they can reach out and get help because they were too proud. And so now they're realizing it, that they can get help and they can move forward in life and they don't have to have these proud moments and act as if they have to hide. And this is just to reach out to the men that if you've been hurt, you've been through something, get help, reach out, because, men give up, men walk away, men fall, men are abused, and they go through things, and they open up their front door, and there's no one there for them. They go to bed depressed also, and they don't have to if they reach out and get help. So I'm just encouraging the men that change is inevitable for you also. But you have to remain steadfast and unmovable and make sure your mind stays clear and focused, that you will not become the abuser because you were abused.
Thank you so much. We are just under the hour, so Carrie, I want to give you your final words, and then Apostle Jones, if you would just I would ask Apostle that you would close us out with some practical steps that we can take to deal with change for the night in your final comments. Carrie?
Yes, I think, like I was saying, if you're really holding on to a person, like I said, sometimes change is simply letting go. And there's this whole thing, I think, with victims of abuse or survivors of abuse with trying not to be the victim, or I don't want to be a victim, because I feel like in society, there's so much kind of disdain or like contempt behind that. Like, oh, she's playing the victim, or he's playing the victim, or she lets him do that, or something like that. And it's just like, I think people don't feel like you can't decompress or take a moment to process everything that happened. Of course, you're going to change, and change comes, and you, of course, need to get out of that situation, but don't feel like everything has to happen so fast. Like I said before, like, it's okay to decompress and process from what happened, and that doesn't mean you're playing the victim or you're being complacent. I think you're being human, and if something traumatic has happened to you, you have a right to pause.
Yes.
And, of course, you can't stay in the bed, but have those moments where you can't get out of bed, or it could be like me and drown your feelings with work. I think that you should take time to process and everything like that, and don't feel so pressured to, oh, I'm out of the relationship, I can't be the victim, I gotta be the superwoman or superman. I think don't take that away from yourself, because acknowledging how you feel is also an expression of self-worth.
Yes. Thank you. Apostle Jones?
Yes. I just want to encourage everyone to do a few things. Number one is be sure about the move that you're making. So understand the move that you're making. Understand that it is to bring change to your life and to better your life and to better your surroundings. So, be sure about that. And then, be progressive. Be progressive, always moving forward. That helps you not be stuck in your past and look forward. A lot of times we look in the past because it's been a part of us, but don't let the past stay attached to you. You can look at television at an old program, but you don't have to. You can change the station, and that's what you have to do. Continue to change the stations. And don't be bullied by someone or something to be something that you're not. Don't be bullied into anything. You be who you are and accept who you are. Find a place of security in all that you do. All that you do. And then two last things is, number one, be grounded spiritually. You have to have a spiritual foundation. I'm not telling you what church to go to. I'm not telling you what mosque or masjid or temple. I'm telling you that you need to have trust in your God, and a spiritual foundation is important. And the last thing is, be sure to talk to someone professional and seek help to get through what you're going through. Because getting through with professional help is saying, I can relieve my mind and my spirit and my emotions and be secure in who I'm talking to, that they will help me. And so these are some steps we can take. Take advantage of everything you can to get help, and keep smiling. Bring joy to yourself. Keep smiling. Bring joy to yourself, because you can't expect people to make you happy if you're not happy within yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Carrie, for being with us this evening. Thank you, Apostle Jones, for being with us. Luv Bay, if you want to catch up on previous episodes from the program, you can visit our YouTube channel, Suffering in Silence DV. We thank you again for joining Suffering in Silence with Minister Tia on Luv Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. Luv Bay family, we are continuing to rise out of the ashes together. Good evening.